Today I'm going to talk about planting trees. So I planted a few 100,000 trees in my lifetime. When I first started working up in the woods as a tree planter planting conifer trees, we would often use either a hodad or a shovel like this to plant them out because they wanted us to plant them quickly. And so the technique that we would use would be first to scalp some of the vegetation away like this, just to create more of a weed-free habitat, and then take our straight-bladed shovel and ram it straight down into the ground, and then pull it back and forward. And now here we've got a spruce tree, and the spruce is actually a pretty nice root system, a little bit longer than the shovel blade. I'm looking for any broken roots, which I don't see much of, and we're going to trim any roots that are longer than the shovel blade, so we don't J-root the tree, and because you don't want to plant roots bent up like that. It's not a healthy tree. So you want the roots to be going down and out, and so now that we've pushed a little hole in like this, this is a fast way. We're just going to open up a hole very quickly by pulling the shovel blade back like this, and then kind of tucking the roots downward, down, making sure they're all pointed down, and then we can pull the shovel out and then kind of work the soil in around the roots, planting the trees roots to the same depth that they were at in the nursery. In this case, a spruce tree, and that's it. So it's a fast way of doing a lot of planting for forestry purposes with small trees such as this. And there's no fertilizer in the holes, and it's just working with the native vegetation here. The important thing is to remove some of the grass or weeds immediately around the tree, and ideally trees like this are planted in the dormant season, not in May, but rather as soon as the snow melts. You want to get them in as soon as possible, ideally, because then they can start their roots growing. Roots will grow at colder soil temperatures than the tops will grow. So we'll plant another one here. So by planting in the winter or very early in the spring, those roots can start growing, because like I say, they'll grow at pretty cold temperatures and way before the tops start growing. And then they are going to be a lot more drought tolerant than if they're planted later in the spring. So once again, now we've got some extensive roots here. There's a broken root there, so we'll trim that off. Trim these longer roots. Of course, if we took the time to dig out a hole to accommodate all these roots downward, that would make the most sense. That would get this tree off to the healthiest start. But in conifer plantings, when you've got a lot of trees to plant, this is a faster way of doing it. But to dig a hole this wide and that deep before trimming the roots off just takes more time. But it pays off, especially if you're planting later in the spring. It pays off in much better survival rate. So it's worth it to take the time to dig a good deep hole to accommodate all the roots. But if you don't have the time for some reason or another, this is another way of doing it for mass plantings, especially when roots are smaller than these roots are, because these roots are really pretty extensive for this kind of planting. But I just wanted to demonstrate this one technique that is commonly used to replant forest trees in the wild. Now, because it's so late in the season, the only way a tree like this is likely to survive is if we supplement with some mulching material around here and some water. Whereas normally conifer trees are planted in the forests around here in western Washington without any mulching or irrigation, it's just not practical to irrigate way up in the mountains. That's why it's critical to plant early in the season, ideally, rather than waiting until May. But if you have to plant later in the spring, then mulching and watering are absolutely critical for survival. Absolutely critical.